Matt, Rob, guys, is Mike alone? Today on the Manspace.
Welcome to the Manspace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter.
Welcome, friends. Indeed, I am alone today. Rob is in the mountains of Montana. He's in Montana. Matt has crappy internet because of the storm that came through, but his house is okay. There's just trees everywhere. But his house and his office are okay, so we're very happy. And this, when we knew Rob wasn't going to be able to be there, and then Matt texted and he said, "Hey guys, it's looking kind of sketchy." And I said, I can do it. I can do a solo because the patron saint of the Manspace really wants me to do a session that's just me. Now, having said that, you'll probably find that I meander just as much, even when I'm only talking to myself. I haven't done something like this in probably 4-ish years. So I used to teach online for a university, and we had to hold a live session once a week, but no one was required to come, but we were required to record it. And so I got very used to talking to a room full of nobody. And I would put pauses in, and I would have students tell me, they're like, "Mike, I totally responded to the questions you asked." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." So once upon a time, I was really comfortable doing this. I'm less comfortable doing it now, especially because I don't have I need pictures of Rob and Matt somewhere. So I feel like I'm talking to someone, because right now I'm just looking at myself in a camera and it sucks. I mean, I love my beard, but that, it's weird just staring at myself. I'm just saying. So obviously today's session will be shorter because it's just me talking. So this will be a briefer one. But I read this article the other day, and I want to kind of think about the stories that define us and the stories that we use to define other people. So the other day I was, flipping through my news feed and came across an article titled, Emma Carey, the skydiver who survived a 14,000-foot fall. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard about this. This was back in 2012, I guess. It had been 11 years 2013. Sorry. It had been in 2013. 20-year-old woman and her friend are backpacking through or traveling in Europe, and they're going to go skydiving out of a helicopter. So they climb the 2.5 miles up, right? The 14,000 feet up. They climb. And it's tandem skydiving. Neither of them are trained skydivers, so they're jumping in tandem. And Emma goes out first, and she goes out one side of the helicopter, and then about 30 seconds later, her friend goes out the other. And Emma, as she's just kind of really enjoying this experience of the skydive, and then she gets the tap on her shoulder, and the tap on the shoulder is her instructor saying, "I'm about to pull the cord." So she does the whole thing she's been taught and crosses and grabs, whatever she grabs, crosses her arms and waits for the jerk, the pull, and it never comes. And she realizes she's not slowing down. And then she feels something pulling at her hair, and she looks back to figure out what's going on. And she can see that her instructor is passed out. Or her tandem skydiver is passed out, and the parachute is a tangle of red fabric. Which, as she put in the article, she goes, "It's not supposed to be a tangle of red fabric." And she continues to free fall and realizes this is it. This is the moment where it ends for me. And she had two thoughts, she said, right before she hit the ground. The first thought was, I don't want to die. I don't know what I want out of life, but I want a life. I want to live. And the second one was, as she put it, the more heartbreaking of the two. It was that her best friend would have to be the one to find her. And then she talks about kind of, counting down until she hits the ground. And then she hits the ground and realizes she's still conscious, and tries to get her legs to move, but can't. And her instructor is still on top of her and still passed out, as far as she knows. Also not moving. And so she just starts to call for her friend. Well, her friend was far enough away that didn't really see, didn't keep track of her the whole way down. So when she gets down, she can see about a half mile away, right, her friend, and can't tell if she's like laying down or sitting down or what, but just kind of realizes she's just sitting there. So she, as quickly as she can, unhooks and sprints the half mile to her friend. As she gets closer, she can hear her friend. She realizes that she's just laying there, sees the instructor not moving, laying on top of her, and fears, well, that guy's clearly dead. And then can hear her friend calling her. Long story short, I'm not good at long story shorts. They take her to a hospital, and obviously she's told, we don't think you'll ever walk again. Right. She's paralyzed from the waist down. She struggles with a handful of things. One, like her best friend, right, calls her. They're from Australia and they're skydiving in Switzerland. So she had to be airlifted to a hospital, I think, in Bern. So her friend calls her parents and calls her sister and calls her boyfriend to say, hey, what happened? The mom and sister show up to help care for her, and she keeps waiting for the boyfriend to come visit. The boyfriend never comes to visit. She realizes over the course of the next month that he's slowly ghosting her. And says, if in that moment, if you had said, walk again or keep this relationship with the boyfriend, she says, I would have chosen the relationship with the boyfriend. But not right. Now she can see that's whatever, but in the moment she goes, that's how big a deal it was to me. She gets back to Australia, and continues rehabbing in Australia, and lives, like, goes, and the water's always been a calming thing. So at one point has her sister take her out of the hospital down to a beach, and she sits in the water where she can't actually feel the water on her legs, but right, she knows the sensation, and she can see it, and it was all very therapeutic for her. Here's what struck me about this story. From some of the things I said, you probably gathered she can walk. The article pointed out that the author said that he probably wouldn't have realized anything, that she was paralyzed from the waist down, until she pointed out the little hitch in her gait. And he goes, once I started looking for it, I could see it. But if she hadn't pointed it out, I wouldn't have seen it. But has no concept, as he put it, of where her legs are. Doesn't know when they're on the ground, doesn't know when they're in the air. It's constantly her telling, or her brain telling her legs, move, do this thing, even though you don't know, like you have no sense of where you're at. And she's talked about, she got a cut and was in bed for like a month because she didn't realize she'd cut her ankle. She's gotten severe burns on her legs because she'll sit next to something hot and not have any idea. that it's burning her leg. Um, and so, right, obviously she's written a book, The Girl Who Fell from the Sky, I think was the name of it, just kind of about her experience. And she's done TED Talks, and she's, talked about it at corporate retreats and to young women and to other, like young groups of people and to strangers and to family and to whoever, right? She's willing to tell the story as often as she wants. But an interesting thing she talks about is this feeling of the story becoming the thing that defines her, right? In the article, they refer to it as, so she'll tell it with a capital IT, and that she worries that it, capital IT, is swallowing up her, all lowercase HER, right? In other words, that this thing that happened to her has become the thing that's defined her. And the author points out, and it's true, that societally this is something we struggle with. He pointed out, you get the one friend who goes through a divorce, and so he becomes divorced Dave. Or you have that friend that's always asking and borrowing money, and so they become broke Brooke. I don't Rob. Rob in high school, like never paid for lunch. He would just go ask people for like change. Like, hey, you have like 10 cents. And he would just collect enough change to go buy food. Um, I don't know what the alliterative form of that is, because all I can think of is mooching. Rob was mooching, but right. Which, I mean, obviously, that's not the story that defines Rob. But we've all probably experienced that. For me, in my family, it felt like the thing that defined me was sticking up for Rob when I was like 12. It became the family joke, right? My brother and we were playing a game, the three of us, my older brother and Rob and I. And Rob was eating Doritos, which gives Dorito breath because that's what Doritos do. And like Paul was just getting irritated at Rob. And so eventually Rob starts crying, and I'm trying to get Paul to stop because it's clearly bothering Rob, and Rob's crying and Paul won't stop. And finally, in all of my 12-year-old whatever, I take my cards, I throw them down, I say, that's it, I'm out of here. And I get up to go leave whatever hotel we were in. This was on a vacation. So I don't know where I thought I was going. But we were staying in like a villa, and I was going to go leave. And for years, over 10, for over 10 years, that would come up at least once every like major family gathering, right? Like it felt like every time, especially if there were games involved, if we were going to be playing games, at some point someone was going to make a "that's it, I'm out of here" joke. And so in my family, it kind of felt like the thing that defined me. It was this thing that I couldn't escape. I couldn't, and now I can see the humor in it. I still don't like, I don't know. I don't have strong feelings about the joke anymore, but I'm okay if no one ever brings it up. It'll probably be a t-shirt now. We'll probably turn it into merch. That's it. I'm out of here. Then I'd be okay with it. If it's on a t-shirt, I'd be okay with it. And I can think of some other things, right? Like, when I was first teaching, I was fairly rigid, and I was okay being straightforward and frankly probably kind of the scary one, right? Like, And then after, I don't know, a while, I realized that's not who I wanted to be. And I worked very hard to change it, but it's still, there have been times where that has come back. And I think, so that's all you see me as. And so this idea of getting pigeonholed by this one piece of our story, right? And in the article, he talks about, the author talks about this idea of, this one chapter in our life becomes the book of our life. And the interesting part is, I think sometimes we do it to ourselves. Sometimes we do things, or we choose to see ourselves in a certain way, and that becomes our narrative. We become that guy. Another example that he uses, right? And we'll actually do this. We see this kind of a lot, I think, in therapy or in the therapeutic world. We'll see, like you talked about, like, we'll say something like, oh, well, he noted that disabilities is a place this shows up a lot. Well, Mike is autistic. And that's actually the example he used. Mike is autistic, and he's like, he's not his autism. And like, we see it a lot, teens in particular, I think. And so, guys, you've probably seen this in your children. Well, I'm depressed and I'm anxious. And in scenarios like this one that we're talking about with Emma Carey, with the girl who, fell from the sky, she's struggling to be seen as more than that. Right? She feels like she's so much more, and struggles to be seen with that. The flip side of it is kind of what we see. And again, it's not just youth, although I think it is much more common with teens. Well, I'm depressed. And that becomes kind of the thing that identifies them. Like, sorry, I can't, my depression. Sorry, I can't, my anxiety. Sorry, I can't. We've talked about this phenomenon before of kind of allowing the mental health struggle to become the excuse, right? Well, I don't have to be uncomfortable here because I don't have to because Jonah Hill, right? His therapist, according to him in the show that he filmed, I can't remember the name of it. Sorry. But basically, talked about, he struggled with anxiety doing press junkets. Well, the guy's a movie star, so press junkets are kind of like part of the deal. And he basically said, yeah, he goes, my therapist told me I didn't have to do press junkets anymore. And I thought, and I'm sure there's more to it than that, right? Like, I'm sure I don't have the full chunk of story, and I don't know what level his anxiety surrounding press junkets is. But I thought, so the solution was just avoid the discomfort. That was the solution. Well, here's something that makes you uncomfortable, so just don't do it anymore. So those are kind of the two sides of it. I think the thing that I would want you to think about today, and then there's another thing we'll talk about. This is going to end up being a really short episode. And then the other thing that I kind of want you to think about today, sorry. See, I told you, this is why Mike doesn't do episodes all by himself. I'm all over the freaking map. I want you to think about those stories that you choose to define you. I also want you to think about the stories that you don't choose to define you. And by that, I mean the ones that other people have decided define you. The ones that you would like to get away from, but you can't. I can tell you right now, you can make all the changes you want. It's a long shot that'll make the story go away. That's out, I'm out of here teasing has pretty much stopped. But it stopped because one day Rob and I were having a conversation, and he brought it up, and I said, yeah, that's not actually funny to me. And I said, it honestly has really never been funny to me. And then I had a conversation like that with one of my other sisters. And then I had it with another sister where, again, it would come up and I would just kind of say, yeah, that's not funny to me. And then it came up at a family thing, or someone brought it up, and someone actually kind of chimed in and said, I don't think Mike thinks that's funny. And I said, nope, sure don't. Where because I'd said it to a couple of people, I felt more comfortable doing it. But right, like the fact that I had changed, the fact that I didn't react like that in situations anymore didn't make the joke go away. The joke stayed, even though that's not how I reacted in situations like that anymore. And so it took me taking an active role in saying, yeah, I don't actually, like, that's not who I am. And the same thing with the other one, right? Of being the scary teacher, the scary uncle, or whatever it was. It took me saying, yeah, that's not, I don't love that part of my past. Like to me, I don't view it necessarily as a positive. I think it was a not great way to try to get people to comply or to behave a certain way. I think there are other ways to encourage more appropriate behavior, I guess. And so again, that one, I finally had to say, hey, like, that's not who I am. And I was even challenged on it, right? Well, but you really liked that about yourself at one point. And I said, yeah, I did, until I realized there was a better way to do things. And so now I don't. So it's true. At a time, I thought, that's great. Like, I thought it was funny to be the scary guy. Like, it was hilarious to me that I could just sit there and give people a look, and they would, like, I could quiet a classroom just by looking at them. I didn't have to say anything. Just fold my arms, turn, look. And they would all, like, go quiet, and I wouldn't ever have to say anything. But I realized that wasn't the person I wanted to be. It certainly wasn't the thing I wanted to define me. But again, me changing that behavior about myself didn't change the fact that that's how people still saw me. Right? I still, and oftentimes they'd be misinterpreting what they were seeing. Sure, I wouldn't be smiling. But that didn't mean I was trying to be scary. It just meant I wasn't smiling. As Jenner points out often, I have RBF, right? Like, if I'm not smiling, I look angry. She'll ask me, she's like, do you smile for your clients? I'm like, sometimes. Or like for your students, like, do your students see you smile? I was like, if I'm smiling, then sure. And she's like, well, you need to make sure you're smiling. I'm like, no, I don't. It's fine. Because I know that, right, like the beard and the natural downturn of my mouth means I look kind of grumpy if I'm just sitting there. And so, right, that can be misinterpreted. And again, it becomes easy for people to be like, oh yeah, see, he's still that guy. It doesn't matter if I'm still that guy or not. And so it's just kind of a tricky It's just kind of a tricky thing, I think. The second thing that stood out in Emma's story was a statement the guy said on happiness. I'm probably not going to be able to find it right away. Sorry. I mean, apparently you're just going to wait while I find it, because what else are you going to do? Be irritated? Well, all that, and I still can't find it. Oh, there she is. When Emma wakes up later, this is post-surgery, post an 8-hour surgery. She is somehow pretty much the same old Emma. She has always been impossibly optimistic with an easy smile, but Emma's not optimistic because happiness knocks on her door every morning. She's one of those people who wakes up every day with a desire to drive toward happiness through the fog of everything else. Happiness isn't a feeling for her. It is a mission statement. I like this idea of actively working towards this thing that we want, right? Like, again, she points out that it's not that everything goes right for her. She talks about, she would watch people in rehab, and the way they would talk about being able to walk again was like, if I can't ever walk again, I don't think I could ever be happy again. And she realized she couldn't hinge everything on that. I can't hinge my happiness on my ability to walk. She said, I have to find it somewhere else. And so I'm going to work towards being able to walk, but I'm not going to make my happiness hinge on that particular success. And I think that's kind of the tricky part is well, one, defining happiness, right? Interesting thing. Ask your spouse tonight how they define happiness. It's a very abstract idea. I'll ask clients frequently, and they are like, I don't know. But it's this thing that we all chase after. We all chase after happiness. But we can't give it a concrete definition. We don't actually know how to define happiness. We just know we'll know it when we feel it. Well, I'll know the happiness when I feel the happiness. And this idea of, right, her driving towards it, I think, and not having everything hinge on something, I think, oh, she's taking control of what that definition is. She's not letting people around her define it for her. She's not letting, even in terms of how this woman has approached, dealing with the instructor who passed out. The theory, by the way, for how this happened, the parachutes have an altimeter attached, and if the chute hasn't been pulled by 5,000 feet, then it'll automatically deploy. The leading theory is that the instructor forgot his altimeter, his personal one, right? And so didn't realize that he was nearing 5,000 feet, because he should be pulling it before 5,000 feet. And just happened to pull the altimeter, or just happened to pull the chute at the exact moment that the emergency chute deployed. And that's how they got all tangled up, and the cords got him passed out somehow. The odds of this happening, according to the experts that they studied or that they talked to it about, are like astronomical. That those two things would happen so close together that the result would be this. but like she has chosen never to disclose or to say the name of the instructor, nor the name of the skydiving company. She's spoken with both of them at length, and they're obviously apologetic, and she has a great relationship with all of them now. But she doesn't. She can see how it feels for them, and so she doesn't want it to become a thing for them. And so she's chosen this thing of like, no, I'm not, like in interviews, I won't say who they are. Well, what's the name of the company? Sorry, I'm not going to say. Just these conscious, deliberate choices that she's making that impact her day to day, that impact that sense of happiness. Right. She realized I can't sit and blame the instructor, though certainly she struggled at times with anger for him, for the parachutes, for skydiving in general. Right. But she realized that couldn't be the narrative that I had all the time. And so I just really like that idea of being able to have a little more control over, one, how we define different emotions, what they look like for us. That's what I mean when I say define it, what it looks like for us. How do we know it when we've found it? And two, working towards it, but working towards it without the expectation that, right, like, well, if I don't get it, I can't be. Because I think, no, we talked, I don't know, a long while ago, one of the guys we interviewed, and we've mentioned this before. I've mentioned this before for sure, because it really struck out to me. To him, right, like feeling that full range of emotions every day, that's a good day to him. And it's just that, it's remembering that the human experience is experiencing all of these different emotions. And so, yeah, it's good to be able to look and say, hey, like, this is what I want to work towards, right? Because it's not letting something define you. It's saying, no, I'm going to work towards this. Now, if you really struggle with depression, working towards happiness might be moving from the bed to the couch, right? But again, that's you like saying, no, I'm not going to let this control me. And this is something that I think guys kind of inherently do, not always, and not obviously not all of them, but I think most of my friends and myself certainly, there were times in my career where it was simply, yeah, I'm feeling really anxious and I don't want to go do it. But if I don't go do it, then I'm not going to get paid. So I guess I'm going to go do it. Right. Because I have to be able to take care of my family. And that means going to do this thing that makes me uncomfortable. And so we do kind of learn how to just, I'm going to push through this thing I don't love because it's the thing that has to happen. Now, the difference, I think, and the thing I'm hoping for, is that you'll start taking these experiences and looking at them differently and saying, maybe there's something more here. Maybe happiness isn't not having to do it. Maybe happiness is found somewhere in doing it, even though it's this super unpleasant task I don't want to do. Spacemen, welcome to the head of me. It's pretty rambly up there. My wife says it's the ADHD, which actually 2 of my past supervisors said the same thing. But just think about the stories that define you. Think about the control you have to influence, to impact, to change those stories, the ones you don't like. And join us next time on the Manspace.